Oh. Yes, indeed. My lockdown project, week 4, going into week 4 of lockdown. So we are Friday, they're giving us another 3 weeks. Stay safe, guys. Stay sane. More importantly, let me do the insanity, the shouting at cars, singing at the moon, and all that stuff. Anyway, enjoy this episode. Okay, so this is what it's doing. So when you wind the adjuster over, tightening, it just goes right around the cam. So what's actually happening is it's not getting to the point where it's maxing out the shoe on the drum. And I don't know why. Now, if I go for the other one, this is the leading edge, that gets like a torque wrench on that, and that drum's locked solid. So there is something wrong with this corner, as I suspected. Quite why it suddenly started working and then didn't work, I don't know. I think what's happened is someone's putting the wrong adjuster on it. So I'm going to have to take this side apart, which is a bit of a ball's ache, but I'd rather have a bit of a ball's ache than a car with brakes that weren't right. So I'm going to crack on, get this back plate off, I'll clamp the hose on the other side, sort this one out, re-bleed the brakes, get the wheels on. Oh yes. Right, I thank you all. Right, got the drum and everything off. You can see the serrations on the edge of this thing have kind of worn off. I don't know if that's part of it. That one's got some more serrations on it, that one hasn't. I have got a box of new ones, so I'm just inclined to cut these off and replace them. The other thing I did notice on the backs of these shoes, being very careful not to touch any of the friction material, this is the pin that meets against. You see the pin has actually started to wear in the 4 or 5 times since I've been backing it backwards and forwards. And that's pretty fucking piss poor, isn't it? You going to focus on that? You're not going to focus on that. Oh, you are now. See? You see it started to grind an edge. You're not going to focus. All right, you're not going to focus. Fair enough. What I'm going to do, have I just noticed something stupid? These pins, are they fatter on one side than the other? That was the side, that one there was the one that was on this side here. So that went like that. Okay. I wonder if it needs the flat edge. I can't remember which way round I did the other side, because the other side works beautifully. Oh, where's the drum off? Maybe it needs that side down and put it on there like that. But I'm going to replace these ratchets while I'm here, because it's just a fucking pain having to take this thing all apart again. You guys will well know I don't like doing things twice. Anyway, I did find the root cause of the axle seal failure on the other side. There's the axle breather. Now that thing was absolutely full of, let me torch, absolutely full of sand and shit, and you can see it's still bunged up. So before I go too much further with filling the axle, I'm going to clean all around the outside of that with the wire brush, unscrew it and replace it. The axle breather can't breathe into the atmosphere, and as it heats up and contracts and the oil expands and contracts, it's just going to force its way out of the nearest or the weakest seal. Anyway, let me get on and do these. Right, so we've got in here a wedge of these. It's going to be the smaller ones, isn't it? Yes, smaller ones. Yes. In fact, they are, I'd say that's going to be about a millimetre bigger. So, yeah, we'll replace these. Okie doke. I shall be back to you shortly. Might seem like a bit of a backward step, but I had to get the servo out of the car. Why, you ask? Well, basically the pedal travel was too long. Between the brake pedal and the master cylinder. Don't worry, I don't have to bleed the brakes again, because I've got it dangling down there. There's master down there. But on the end of the push rod that goes through the middle of the servo, there's this little bolt. Marvellous. And all you do is extend it. Yeah, right. Anyway, that's been all I can do to get that undone. So, clamped it in mole, registered trademark grips. Really have been very gentle. They can come off there now. Oh, yes. I know that the servo is working because when I cover over this hole with duct tape and have the, what's its name, the breather tube on the top here, which is around somewhere, and suck on it, so to speak, for now, I'm able to generate a vacuum, so I can feel the vacuum. If you just suck on that thing without covering this thing over or without having a master cylinder in place, then you're not going to really, you're just going to be breathing through this. So that's okay. The only other thing I've noticed, this thing doesn't have a filter, so I might just wedge a bit of foam in there or something. Yeah. Sorry for all the sniffing, guys. It's what I do. I'm conscious I sniff. It's because my ears are knackered at the moment. And I've not even been on the angle grinder this week either. Right, so I'm going to clean this bolt up now. Lube it, pop him back in again. And I can adjust him. And I'll go through that in a minute when I get this servo back on the car. But even now, I'm starting to wind that back in. And it's going mega tight, you see, because of all this old brake fluid and corrosion that's come out of the old master cylinder and just solidified around the end. That's what locked it all in place. I don't think that someone had maliciously or deliberately tightened that in. But anyway, Mr. Wire Brush provided. Let me get this thing cleaned up. Yes. Right, so having fixed the underlying cause behind some of the issues I was having with the brake system, and I'll go through those actually, because it's well worth letting you know. As you've seen, I had a problem with the adjusters on the passenger side. This is the driver's side. I was still getting a spongy pedal. So what I did next, there's a mechanism where you can use a hose clip. Don't use other things, use a proper brake hose clip. And don't use brake hose clips on aero hoses, please, gentlemen. But if you've got standard rubber hose, you can clamp the hose, yeah, and then find out if the pedal action improves. And it gives you a rough idea about then where the sponginess is coming from. Because if I clamp this and the hose is no longer spongy, then I know that there's air in the rear line. Or air somewhere at the back end, and the fault lies at the back end. In theory, if you were to clamp all three hoses, the one at the back, the two at the front, and the pedal is still spongy, then you've got a problem with the master cylinder, or there is air somewhere at the top end of the system. I didn't have three clamps, unfortunately, so I thought, well, I'm going to try and work around this, see if I can do this in a little bit more logically. So this is where I found out about the rear adjuster. I thought if I max all of the adjusters out, so all of the shoes are wedged up tight against the drum, so no wheels will turn, and then bleed the brakes through, that should get rid of the sponginess. It didn't. So then I'm thinking, well, what the heck? I just didn't... Well, okay, there's going to be a reason why the brakes are spongy. The problem I've got, or the problem I had, was that all of the... I'm just going into the shed to get something for a second, because I'm going to give a little bit more information around this. Oh, it's not that one I want. Ramble. The problem that I had is that I've put a brand new master cylinder on. I've got new sleigh cylinders, new pipe work, new shoes, new everything. So you don't know if there's actually a problem with the master cylinder that's causing the sponginess. Now, these master cylinders are very, very, very simple. I've had spongy brakes with the dual circuit master cylinders, those master cylinders that have two pipes coming off the top, not one. And the dual circuit brakes have two pistons inside, outer piston, which then pushes in turn the inner piston. And they work on independently. The fronts will work independently of the rears. And it's just a safety setup. I have had instances where the fluid was leaking from the front chamber, near the front of the caliper, to the rear chamber because the seal was faulty in between the two. So it wasn't leaking out the back and into the footwell or into the servo, as we got here, but it was leaking between the two chambers, and that caused me a spongy brake pedal on a twin circuit master cylinder. That was new as well, so that went back. However, with this one, I'm fairly confident that the master cylinder is okay. And the reason I think it's okay is because, first and foremost, if I was to, and I've undone the clamp down here that holds the brake pipe to the top of the slave. If I pull the cylinder forwards, there is no brake fluid coming out the back of it. So the brake fluid, when I'm confident, well, I'm rambling. The master cylinder, there's kind of, on these single circuit systems, there's kind of one seal really that pushes the fluid out from the master cylinder down the pipe and to the wheel cylinders. So because there's only one seal in there, it's not leaking out the back. I'm pretty confident that the master cylinder is okay. But we've still got spongy brakes. So then I started looking at the equipment. So I got this chap here. It's been really useful. I've done other cars with it. And basically this fella here, the idea behind it, if you look at the picture on the back, the idea behind it is that you've got a spanner. There's no spanner in the box, by the way, so you will need the spanner. You'll need some way of sorting the brake fluid out, for topping up. But the idea is you then put the tube over the bleed nipple, open the bleed nipple, pump the pedal a couple of times. As you're on the downstroke, do the bleed nipple up, and then cushy, no problems at all. I've adapted this thing slightly because there was, on the end of this, a non-return valve. And the non-return valve, if I pull this out, went over this hole on the end of the tube. And in the end of the tube, there should be a ball. Focus. There should be a ball in the end of the tube. It was missing. So when I pulled this thing apart, there was no non-reserve on it anymore. So what was then happening was, on this wheel, which is the first wheel you start with, near side front, you always start with on these series Land Rovers, single circuit Land Rovers. There wasn't much fluid in the bottom of the container, and therefore when I was pushing the brake pedal down, it was blowing the bubbles down the line, no non-return, so it was just sucking it straight back up again. Push down, suck back, push down. So I went for the old-fashioned method, half filled this with brake fluid, made sure that the end of the pipe was underneath the level of the fluid, and yeah, I got a shitload of air out of this wheel here, absolute shitload. And that was kind of a little bit stupid of me. I had to beat myself up over that a little bit because I assumed that the kit, the equipment I was using, was working. And sometimes you have to revert back to old school methods of a clear plastic pipe feeding down into a jam jar full of old brake fluid. And you watch the bubbles come through, because when no more bubbles come out of the end of the tube, you know that there's no air in the line. So while this is, useful for capturing brake fluid, and I did manage to kick half a litre of brake fluid all over the floor. That's axle oil when I undid the drain plug, topping it up. I managed to tip a load of brake fluid on the floor. So this design here is okay, but don't automatically assume that the equipment is always fit for purpose. That was my problem number one. So I bled the brakes right through, and I got rid of the spongy brake pedal. Ooh, goody, goody, goody. Right, so now we've got a pedal which travels halfway down, but no longer can I pump it and bring the bite point up. It's biting halfway down. So this is kind of where now you need to work a little bit around the master cylinder. Let me just pull him off again. And this push rod that you can see inside. So you can just about see the push rod poking its nose out the inside of the cylinder. Servo. So all I was really doing was working one side. In fact, that's probably a bit too tight there. When it comes to the interaction between the brake pedal and the master cylinder, what you don't want is to have any pressure whatsoever on the master cylinder. Now, I couldn't find the exact document or the exact description around this, but here I can feel that push rod is slightly too tight because it's pushing the master back out again. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wind that nut in a turn. I just check that I can kind of position the master cylinder up there and not have to hold it in place. Now, there is a certain amount of give in these systems. So assuming that the pivot points and the clevis pins are all nice and solid. And then the next thing you've got is the clevis pin and the push rod on the pedal goes through the servo. And there's a joint between an exit rod and an input rod for now. No, there's no need for a finale, Richard. Behave yourself. In the servo. So when you push the brake pedal down, you will get a certain amount of give in the pedal. The trick is to get that at the right level. So all you really need to do is from the inside of the car, especially with the window top off, you can actually reach into the car and push the brake pedal down. And you can see the master moving there just by pushing the brake pedal down. So what I really want to do is to get this, so in the resting position, the servo and the master cylinder can be pushed together, but without it pushing on any of the push rods or any of the seals of inside the master cylinder. So inside the master cylinder you can see the cup inside there, and that is the end of the hydraulic system. So I need to adjust the push rod so it doesn't quite touch that cup inside the master cylinder. That will then allow this thing to sit flat, and it's a balance between that and making sure then the pedal works. So let me, I'm going to go and get the tripod for a second, because you guys might like to see this. I don't know, you might not. You might be fast winding through this crap. But it's just trying to explain to you the logic behind these prehistoric systems. Now, I never drove this car, and I was never able to really use the brakes on the old setup. I did dig the old master cylinder out, and it did fit better. So I can only assume that this design of master cylinder has the cup or the seal a little bit further recessed than the old one. And you can see in there it's quite recessed, quite a long way. But that's why they put an adjuster on the end of the what's its name, the push rod that comes out of the servo. Right, I'm going to put my teeth in and get this phone on the tripod. Right, okie doke. Have we got the light on? No, we haven't got the light on. Okay, so there we can see what's going on. So first and foremost, let's pull the master out, supporting him, wind it in a turn, push it back. Right, now the master now sits back against the servo. Not as level, perhaps, as I might like. And what I'm going to do now is I'm pushing the brake pedal down, but just checking. It's probably a bit too tight still, because I'm pushing the pedal down maybe 1/2 centimetre, and it's starting to move servo. So I'll take it off and we'll wind it another turn. I'm just shortening this rod here. Pushing back against, I'll push the pedal down. Right, it's probably nearer an inch, 2 centimetres before it starts to push the brake master. Let's go for another 1/2 turn. Just because, right, that feels like it's got taking all of the slack in the linkage inside the servo and between the servo and the master, and of course there is no play in the pivot points on the brake pedal because that's all been apart, and I know that that's all strong. So push the pedal down. The reason why you don't want the master cylinder under constant pressure, by the way, is that's pretty much how I like it, actually. The reason you don't want the master cylinder under constant pressure, if the master cylinder cannot rest, sit at a rest position, then there's going to be hydraulic pressure in the lines and your brakes are going to start binding. And you may find that under certain circumstances that push rod inside the servo expands, or something expands and then causes the brakes to lock on. So it's quite important you kind of understand the impact of having a rock solid pedal right from the very, very top, and then the potential for brakes to lock on. So you can hear me, you can actually hear the mechanism inside. So I'm holding the brake cylinder, master cylinder, tight against the servo. Probably need to measure it really at the pedal. I still think that needs to go in a little bit further. Right, so that starts to push on the master just about 2, maybe 3 centimetres down. So let's whiz these back up again, whiz these bolts back up. So just 2 nuts and some gravity. Ah, Mr. Gravity, it's been a while. Cack-handed buffoon. Right, let's bind these nuts back on. 17mm nuts, pair of. And we'll tighten the master cylinder back up to the servo. I've just got some instant gasket that sits between the master cylinder and the servo, because you don't necessarily want unnecessary vacuum leaks on these things. They need to maintain a vacuum. And all the vacuum does is it gives assistance to the brakes. So you need less effort, in theory, on the brake pedal for the same amount of effort at the brake master cylinder, which is then redistributed down towards each of the wheel cylinders. And again, like I say, I've checked the master for its vacuum, and it appears to be good. Can't breathe through it. You can actually check yours in situ if you so desired. If you've got the adapter on the end here, let me go and get that, because I found it. So there's the adapter. They should have a non-return valve on them. So you can't blow through that, but you can suck through it. Okay, and that fits up here through this nice rubber seal. Oh, he's in. Okay, and then that normally connects to the engine, to the inlet manifold, where it will draw a vacuum out of here from the inlet manifold. That's kind of the logic behind it. However, you can test this quite easily just by attaching a hose onto here and see if you can suck through it. And if you can breathe through it, or if you blow through it, then you know that the non-return element in there's failed. If you can breathe through it by sucking, then you know that the vacuum's failed in there. And you can rebuild them, but I would have thought if you don't know what you're doing with taking one of these things apart, and there's quite a big foiled spring in there. If you don't know what you're doing, best off just get a replacement or get someone, a specialist, to rebuild it for you. I'm not going berserk with these nuts. They're quite big, like I say, 17 mil, but whoops, missed that one, didn't I? Right, okay, now we're on. Let's see where the brake pedal is now. Right, so I can feel it engaging at about an inch going down, and then it goes down another inch, and that's all the brakes locking on. And I can't push it any further than that. So I think that that is bang on. So that's how I've adjusted these. Now the other problem I've got with this is the brake light switch has failed. It doesn't work. It's open circuit constantly. So the way these things are supposed to work, there's a little plunger on the end here. And the idea is when you push the brake pedal down, it breaks the circuit. It doesn't work. So when it's that should be broken, that should be engaged. When I put a continuity meter across the 2 points, the brake lights are always on. So I've left that in there to remind me that I need to get hold of one. Right, let's get on with, what am I going to do next? I'm going to put all the wheels on. So at the moment you can see, oh my goodness. I need to put the back wheel on. I got distracted with a bonfire at the top of the garden last night. And then I'm going to do the steering tracking. So steering tracking is relatively straightforward on these things. So first and foremost, geometry. Now you might think it's a bit late to be doing geometry. It probably is, but I haven't got the pinch bolt through the lower arm yet anyway, so that can just pull off, so to speak. Make sure I get the geometry correct between the relay, and this is obviously looking forwards on the car. So you've got the relay coming down from the steering box. Needs to be at 81 degrees to the perpendicular and 90 degrees to the main rod that goes across. So I can measure that all out. And then there's a really simple way just to check the towing. So you need on these you need 1.2 to 2.4 millimeters of towing. Barely fucking anything, is it? So I'll adjust this. I can do it with a tape measure. The idea is you just need to measure between the centre line of the wheel horizontally. And you've seen your tyre repair, well, you've probably seen your tyre repairman do the tracking, and they hang a device over the wheel which centres on the centre of the hub, and it's got a spirit level on it, so it tells you when it's level, so it knows the centre point of the hub, centre point of the wheel, and that's how they measure the towing on these things. And then I can get the wheels slightly towed in at the front, and that's going to be the steering geometry largely done. I'll get it checked out by the garage when it's MOT. But yeah, we can get that done. The front breather, by the way, was fine. No problems at all with that on the front of the axle. Rear breather, as you know, in fact, I've got it on the bench because I was going to give it a little clean out. Here he is. Now you can tell if these things are working or not, because you can, once it's been cleaned up, you can put your mouth over the end of that and you should be able to breathe through it. hence it being a breather. That is just solid. So I'll give that a go in the ultrasonic cleaner and see if I can recover it, but the chances are it's full of grit and sand and shit. Like I say, when I took it out of the rear axle gave me a prisoner's fart. It went... It's probably unnecessary. Right, get this thing on the ground today, get it driving. It's going to be a laugh, isn't it? I mean, we're not at the end of the project yet by any means, but it'd be nice to get it going. I'm also not convinced about these rubber seals are here. I think that they're too tight. So this rubber seal I put down the bottom edge of the door is this stuff. I had some of it on the shelf in the shed. The original seal, it does close though. So maybe it's settling down. The original seal, looks like... That's almost exactly like that. See, come out of the barn. And I say almost exactly like that because this is the one that came off the car. And you see on the profile here, they've got this quite thick metal shard strip in here. You drill through the A-post and you pop rivet it on, and then this is the seal that keeps the weather out. They're all right. They're okay as devices. I don't have to use the original holes either. I could, you know, drill holes elsewhere. And I think this is the driver's side one. So then the idea is you kind of fix it on like so, pop riveting it to the A-post. I might try that on this side. Just butt it up to there. And it should, in theory then, keep out the elements. However, on this side, more so than the other side, I think there's too much of a gap up this leading edge of this door. Trailing edge is alright. I've still got to adjust this door up. I haven't done much work on it other than just hang it. The other door, passenger door, it's got nice straight lines, front and back. See all the lines all the way around. Beautiful. Top work that. Nicely done. No real effort to line this thing up. It just lined up. And that's because the hinges are so straightforward. It's got the door stay in and the grab handle on the inside. I haven't put the window lock in yet. That needs to go in still. It's got the internal lock so that you can lock it from the inside of the car. It stops the door from opening. But then it's also got the external lock from the key. Very, very simple, these things. I never actually got round to repairing the bottom of this door. But so the problem is that if you kind of like, if it's like that and you want to close it, it's not as easy to close with that seal. Okay, if you swing it, it closes. So perhaps that's the idea, swing it. Because, I shouldn't say that, should I? These seals here, you can see it's already popped out of this corner here because it's getting too tight. I might try the original style seal in it, but it does seal nicely up against the metalwork. Anyone that's been in a series Land Rover knows that driving one of these things is actually quite a drafty experience. They're not designed for their air tightness, really. In fact, here you can see the rear seal, and how it fits on. That's exactly what we've been talking about the front seal. You see how it's pop riveted onto the frame. I can pull back the... And these seals are all the way around. These are nice original ones. I've got some reproductions that we bought for my dad's 88. We could not get these bastard things to fit. We ended up tearing the whole flipping lot off the car in the end. Where are they? They're here. Now these things, these are the ones that we had. So these were new reproductions. And when I compare these, because I haven't actually done that yet, let's get the OE version out. That's more or less the same piece as well. This rubber channel at the top here was far too fat. We just couldn't close the door. It was too strong. This part of the seal was too tough. This part here just flattens nicely, that bit. And it's quite common on these things for these reproduction seals are just not to kind of work. You can see here, they have been fitted and then they've been torn off. I don't even know where these came from. They came from somewhere yonks ago. But I've also sorted door seals out. Rabbited enough about door seals. Let me get this thing back on the ground and we'll go through the tracking. Oh, I strapped the brake lines down as well. So here you can see, attach the brake lines to the chassis using zip ties. I don't actually have a problem with that. I think it works. My MOT man's quite pleased about it as well. He likes it. He said you can't. You know, zip ties are tight, and they're going to hold the line tight, and they're also not going to damage the line. You can't crush a brake line with a zip tie. Right. What else? I think that's about it for the moment. Let me get on with this steering and putting wheels on and get it onto the ground. Marvellous. It's a bit basic, but what I've basically done is marked the front to the back of the tyres with a bit of masking tape. Used a spirit level through the middle of the hub, and then checked left and right wheels for levelness. They're level. Measured it across the top of the chassis rails just to give me a baseline. It's standing on stands at the moment. So what we need to do then, right, move the workbench out of the way a little bit. So you've got the tie rod that ties the two hubs together. So by winding this, we can move the wheels in or out. It is actually moving. No, the other one's moving, sorry. The other one is moving. So what I've done is I've set the relay, so the relay is exactly as it should be, and I can adjust the hub just by winding the relay backwards and forwards. And now it's just a case, and I can't do this while I'm videoing, I'm afraid, folks, is to measure between the two wheels, front and back, but also you can look from above and we can see that wheel is more or less straight. Actually, no, it's a little bit toe in. You can just see, if I line myself up along the top of the wing, nice and straight, you can see the toe of the wheel, where my toe is pointing towards the middle of the car, just a tiny bit. We go to the other wheel, and we do the same thing. You see this one is a bit toe out. So what we're going to need to do then, how are we going to do this? I probably need to fiddle around, getting the tracking right first of all, and then adjust the tie rod. So get the rod, the black rod down here, the black rod, there we are. There's an ancient tradition for you that's probably prehistoric. Get this sorted out so that I'm happy that the two wheels are the right distance apart, front and back, and then adjust this one so that the basically the angles are all correct. But because I've adjusted that and that already, this should be fairly straightforward to adjust. We'll just centre the wheel inside the car. And that's really it. That's all I'm planning on doing. I'm going to get the music back on and enjoy this pleasant day today. It's most bloody pleasant. Really very, very nice. Quiet. Hope you guys are getting on all right with this bloody coronavirus, but yeah, it's no fun for anyone. Right, I'm going to crack on with this, and I'm going to stop whinging. And I've also got the T-piece for the washer jets, so I can get that all fitted in as well. That arrived in the post today. I mean, I can't understand how the postal service is still functioning. The guys are doing really well. I have noticed that the cost of a first-class small parcel has gone up since the last time I used small parcels. Small parcel, I think second class, is £3 or thereabouts. The first class was about £5.80, and I had to post my missus her Easter egg because the Easter bunny dropped it off here and not where I live. Just about see Exmoor over there. I'll take you for a wander up the field later on, and we'll go and look at Exmoor from the top of the field. Dad's field, so staying on the boundaries. Part of my daily exercise routine. Fuck it, let's do it now. Yeah, let's go for a wander. Bollocks to it. Then I can put the music on and we can listen to the pleasantness of music tinkling away in the background while I shout at an old Land Rover. I want to get that on four wheels really and drive it out the barn today. That's the objective. This is our bonfire from last night. I've got a little bit of metal I need to recover from here. Quite a bit of metal in there, in fact. quite a good pallet fire. What's that there? It's a gasket of some sort of, oh, it's a sump gasket. Must have something in that sump gasket to make it like that. That's weird, isn't it? Bio waste. Strip that lot up, get the metal out of it. Bit of cardiovascular exercise. So we go up to the top gate. Oh, there's a big lump of tree there. The trouble is the oh, it is in bud. I can see it coming out into bud. A lot of these trees are coming up a bit quicker. Suddenly happened in the last week. Green leaves. Right, coming up here through the top gate. There we are. That's a nice view, isn't it? Look at that. I go across to this corner. There are considerably worse places to be locked down. Really are. I'm a lucky bastard. Sorry about that, guys. Feel sorry for those people that are stuck in tower blocks. But at least I can talk to my missus. Considering how much rain we've had this year, horses used to come right up here and shelter from the howling gales. Oh, look at that. The other side, right at the church tower. Proper high up Exmoor. Lovely, isn't it? Raymond and Pearl's farm in the distance there, just to the left of the tree. Sheep farmers. And there was sheep in this field here next door. That field is unused. Bluebells are out. Beats one of my sweary driving trips, this, doesn't it? I don't know, does it? Yeah, sheep are all out of that field now. But there we go. Beautiful views up here. I was saying to my dad that he should actually do something with this field, build a plot up here somewhere. And because the views are just really beautiful. Anyway, banging on about views, not sorting out tracking. Land Rover, the wind's picked up. Blower motor is in. The only thing I need to do is I just want to double up the earth on this thing, put it back into the earth side of the loom. I don't quite know where that's going to go to, but I'll work it out. The only reason being is that sometimes these screw fixings that go through metalwork aren't always a reliable earth. But anyway, you remember when I took this thing apart, I don't know if I videoed it, I may have done, there was an excessive amount of swearing about getting to these two bolts that went through up here, and the reason being was that the captive plates behind them had started to spin. Now they're kind of prehistoric spire nuts, there's the remains of one of them in there, not spire nuts, riv nuts. Here's a riv nut. So there's me thinking, piece of piss, I'll just pop some more riv nuts in there. Fingers hurting today, I don't know why. Anyway, I'll just pop some more riv nuts in there. The problem is, they're just, that one's all right. That one will probably get away with that one. That one's too big. The hole's too big. So I was trying to think outside the box. Do I just fix it with one bolt? Yeah, I could do that. Bit of foam around the contact plate where it blows the heat into the heater matrix. There's a hole behind there, you see. And then I thought, well, why don't I just adjust its position slightly so that it kind of then just screws straight through the bulkhead. No, that's not going to work either. Oh, I might have had another idea though. I could put one hole centrally, couldn't I? Where I was thinking, in my kind of just pondering this, trying to work out how best to mount this thing back on. There's two mounting holes at the bottom down here, one either side. They're easy because I just put these kind of Land Rover spire bolts. They're like that. And like, so the ones I put on the motor, you can see it, you can't see it, you can see it there. And then on the other side, really nice and tidy, you can see them like that. And these are the ones up here for the heater. So I need to drill another couple of holes through for the heater matrix itself. But what I was just thinking was I could put a rev nut into that one because it'll work, and then I could drill a hole here and just put a nut and bolt through it. Now I can't put a nut and bolt through it because I've got a blind on the inside. Do you remember I had to cut the hole in here, which I've subsequently welded up because it was behind the lower dash. There's, you see the remains of the hole there. I could glue it on. No, that seems a bit defeatist, doesn't it? I mean, that looks nice in there, doesn't it? Look at that. It's got a cover that goes over the outside of it. The other thing I was pondering was kind of making up a piece of metal, putting 2 riv nuts on it, or welding 2 nuts to it, and then pop riveting it to the bulkhead. But I think, to be honest, I'm probably getting a little bit autofocus on, getting a little bit kind of overthinking it there. So what I'm probably going to do, I'll take the heater unit out again. There is the remains of one of the holes that went through the bulkhead. This section was original and obviously the footwell is new. So I can drill that out again, gives me a focal point for the mounting. There's one of the mountings on the bottom. There's the other mounting on the bottom. So again, what I can do with those is push a spire clip and use a spire bolt to hold it in place. It is entirely possible I could just end up pop riveting the top piece on. Like I say, that will go into that hole, but I just get the feeling that it's a little bit too... You can see there's a sleeve on the inside. See the sleeve? It doesn't go in a huge distance, but it's still a sleeve. It might wedge itself in there, it might not. I'll give it a go. This one here, there's just too much on that to expect that riv nut to take place. So I think what I'll do is I'll fix it on 3 bolts. We'll see how well this round here mates up to the hole here. In fact, I will put some body sealant. I've got some 3M body sealant that I tend to use whenever I need to bridge a gap. This stuff. It's bloody good. Body caulking. Just buy it in bulk. This lot expires 0920. Crikey, I better get a move on with that. Body caulking, very, very good. It's a bit like Dum-Dum used to be. You remember you used to be able to get that stuff? I don't know, they probably went out of business a million years ago, but I know Dum-Dum's been quite difficult to get hold of since. And people use all manner of stuff like kitchen sealant, which is wholly inappropriate for an application like this. Oh look, bird shit on it already. Right, so we're pondering far too much on this. Let's fix it, see if I can get that into there. And I think the worst case scenario is going to be drilling a couple of holes in here and pop riveting it at the top and ignoring these fixing holes. That'll be the worst case scenario. It's not a concourse restoration. This thing's supposed to be, you know, an easy job. Had I thought about this before I welded up the hole on the inside and measured my riv nuts, then I would have probably welded nuts on the inside. But again, they're just going to give way again, aren't they? But never mind. I might have even just cut a slot under here. But then that would have exposed the inside of the car. No, it wouldn't have done. Wouldn't have exposed the inside of the car at all. It's a box section. It's a sealed box section. In fact, I can access it through here. But it's just too far for me to get a nut and bolt into there. It's too much of a fiddle. Wasting too much time. Let's get it bolted in. I hope that helps you. Me rambling my way through a problem. What a buffoon. Oh dear. Yes. Right, I want to get the heater unit in because I want to put the coolant pipes on so I can fill the cooling system up so I can start the car, is where I'm going with this. Because I think we're kind of getting to the point now. What have I got on the to-do list? Axle's done, pinch bolt relay not done, coolant to block. So I've done one of those. That one can go. That's done. So coolant is the thing I'm working on really at the moment. The steering's all nicely set up. The reason I've not put the front panel or the bumper on yet, because it's easier to access the pinch bolts. Under here, you can see I've just put a generic nut and bolt through it at the moment. It's not the right specification. It needs to be a lot stronger than that. Steering related, I'm not going to piss around when it comes to steering related or brake related. Yes. And I haven't put any of the inner wing structure in on this side yet either. I need to put the splash guards in here, because you can see the front wheel. Hello. So splash guard needs to go in here, but while I was pissing around with the brakes, I didn't do that. Right, enough rambling, let's get on and do this heater. You don't need to watch, because I can have the music on then, and not have this video demonetised. Oh, the other thing I did get was the T-piece. T-piece for the washers. That needs to go in as well. Let's pop him there. So if I lose the bastard, I know where it is. Enough gambling on. Jogging round the houses. It's all nonsense. The 10mm, not a 10mm, the riv nut worked in that hole beautifully, no problems at all. So I lubed up the bolt, shoved him in. Not going to worry about the other one, because with the other gloop that I put on there and the two screws, the two screws, riv nut screws that I put in there, that's solid, and it's up against the bulkhead, nice and tight. So that gloop will have made up the difference, filled the gap. Happy with that. Ain't going no place. Right, that's done the heater. Let's get the heater pipes on. Here we go. Right, videoing. Now, I bought the heater hose that goes from the matrix to the bypass pipe. Let's get this chap out of the way. He's proper stuck on. He don't want to go. He's gone. And as you can see, miles too bastard short. Miles too short. I used a Range Rover heater pipe in the end. It keeps the bypass and the heater feed from the valve tap. Keeps it all nice and organised, and then I just use a generic silicone hose for the return back to the cylinder head. I've fitted the air cleaner, sort of. It's going quite tight into there, and I'll create the breather pipe back onto there. We're doing this all one-handed, of course, as is the tradition. I've been cleaning up the choke switch, which is, what did I do? There it is. So this thing was not working, and it was completely and utterly, it was just coated in crap. So I'm not going to open it now, but I've lobbed it through the cleaner, the ultrasonic cleaner. It's come up a bit better, so I'm rather hoping that's going to work now. This is the wiper bezel. I don't remember, very early in the series, the driver's side wiper would not release. I tried to undo the bolt and it snapped off, and then I ended up trying to drill it out, and it ended up being glued on. I have absolutely no idea why you would glue one of these bloody things on. Anyway, so I bought a new ferrule thing, which is this bit here, which is that bit there. It's got splines on one end, and it's got a grub screw through it, which goes in there, and it's supposed to lock on. I'm not going to bin this thing, because I'm going to tap that out for a bigger grub screw. But look at all the shit in there. Oh, despair of. No, I can't despair of anything right now, because there's nothing left to despair of. However, fitted that, nice grub screw, fitted the other side. There's no wiper motor on it yet, so obviously I'm just drawing the cable backwards and forwards, and you can see it's sweeping quite nicely there. It's got a good sweep. The only minor issue I've got is that that one's a bent arm and that one's a straight arm. I don't know why. No idea. No idea at all. So a dodgy hose that doesn't fit. Wipers that do fit but got different arms on them. But that's Land Rover for you. There's a lot of dust on this car. Oh, hello. Look from the inside. Ah, it's acceptable, isn't it? And look, the wiper, if I pull the cable, see, it's a lot tougher pulling it from the cable. The cable really does have some gearing to pull. So it's got a lot of torque on it. I did get the T-piece, I told you that already, I'm sure. There it is. And I'll do the those chaps later on. The good news is, you can tell if a door is roughly going to fit if you can bum it closed, so to speak. You could do with going in just a tiny bit. This is where I think these seals at the these seals at the front are now too tight. In fact, if I pull them off, so to speak, I'm not pulling off seals on this video. That's not what this channel's about. Let me just take the seal out. Right, now bumming closed. I'm not bumming seals. No, see, that's about the same. Land Rover, quality, fit. Now I might pull the catch in a tiny bit. I've not done the driver's side, not done any. Oh, the other thing I found, this irritated. So the captive plate on the top that's on the inside here needs to have that underneath it. So if you're doing this job yourself, don't forget the bonnet lift, catch plate needs to go underneath the captive plate. So I need to undo the nuts there and put this back on, and then that can go in place. Do that tomorrow. Brakes are beautiful. Haven't bothered to start it because alcohol got in the way. But it is gone 7 o'clock, for crying out loud. I mean, don't judge me. No, feel free to judge me. I'm there to be judged. But not on painting this car. Don't judge me on painting the car or not painting the car. Put all these bits up. Now I know the electrics are all working. I'm just waiting for the bulb to come in. Then I can reassemble the top dash completely. That's the ignition light there. Reassemble the top dash completely, put it all back in, and then that was the main thing behind this. Everything's now working apart from the flasher, which don't want to know. And I might even just dump this thing into the ultrasonic tank. You can see there's a fair amount of... Anyway, I don't know what I'm going on about there. Got no idea. No idea at all. Yes. That's one of the more obscure facts from this channel. Most of the content that I video after 7 o'clock ends up on the cutting room floor. Can you work out why? So there you go. It's one of the rare moments I video past 7 o'clock, or actually publish anything past 7 o'clock. Right, I've been dealing with the... this is the blanking plate that goes on the inside of the bulkhead and blanks off the transmission tunnel. And then the transmission tunnel, or the gear stick cover, goes over this section here. It's not in bad shape. There's a few holes. I'm not going to worry about them. Really am not going to worry about them. What I'm going to do is, I've been over this thing. I've beaten it straight using the dolly and the hammer. And I've got it into a shape that I'm fairly comfortable with, inside and out. Because some of these areas where the lips overlap each other, like there, and more like there, there was rust that had developed in between the pair of those, and it had blown both layers. For now. So all I've really done, and that's the original colour of course, so all I've really done is just cleaned it all back. This fella here goes around there like that, and it covers the high-low ratio stick. The one with the yellow, I don't know, brain's gone blank. So that goes over on the floor area, and the high-low stick goes. And this fella, the only job for this fella, and you can see this one's actually quite new. It's been replaced reasonably recently because there's no rust on it, really, apart from just a tiny bit up there. Holds the gaiter back that goes around the stick. This, however, I think is original to the car. And I got rid of most of the loose, I'm pretty sure I got rid of all of the loose rust around it. And I'm going to give it a quick going over with Rustbuster FE123 molecular rust converter. I shan't do it while I'm on camera because it's just boring to watch for a start off, and secondly I need to glove up. I'm not going to put my phone near this stuff. I think I might need to just get Mr. Tappy in there just a tiny bit. All I'm doing here, I mean normally I do this on a tripod or two-handed. The only thing I thought was I just saw there was some loose rust down there, and you can see it's gone down. Happy enough with that. Anyway, this edge round here is rotted out. Not a huge issue because I've replaced this already on the inside. I could cut this section out and weld a new section in. I'm going to see what this looks like on the car before I make that judgment call. And I can't do that at the moment because the transmission tunnel's in, and I need to take that out and then put this in and see how that looks from the driver's seat. Arm closed beautifully. But before I do any of that crap, I need to derust. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to retire for the evening. It's not horrendous. I've seen better, I've seen worse. This is the side that faces the engine. So this will be exposed to all manner of road crab. You see this sand and all sorts of stuff up here that's covering over the sand. Sorry, covering up the paint. So I'll just treat the rust and we'll deal with it tomorrow, when I've had time to think about it. Prepare myself for the next day of lockdown. 3 more weeks to go.